Nintendo, the company behind some of the most iconic games and characters in history. But what if I told you that one of their greatest successes only happened because of one of their greatest failures? That's right. Nintendo of America was on the verge of disaster, drowning in unsold inventory. But out of that near collapse came a game that would change the company and the entire industry forever. So let's rewind and find out how one of Nintendo's biggest flops became the blueprint for its future success. Hadouken! The year was 1980, and Nintendo was trying to figure out how to break into the US arcade market. Hiroshi Yamauchi, Nintendo's big boss in Japan, knew they needed a dedicated American branch, so he sent his son-in-law, Minoru Arakawa, to make it happen. Arakawa set up shop in Manhattan, got a warehouse in New Jersey, and partnered with two truck drivers turned entrepreneurs from Seattle, Ron Judy and Al Stone. They were to distribute Nintendo's arcade games across the country. Sounds like a great start, right? Well, not exactly. Breaking into the arcade business was no small feat during this time. Established giants like Atari and Midway were already dominating, and American arcade owners were skeptical of new players. Nintendo needed a big hit to prove itself, but its first attempt was about to fall flat. Nintendo's big debut in the US was a game called Radar Scope. It was a space shooter, very similar to Space Invaders or Galaxian, but with more advanced graphics. Yamauchi was convinced that it would be a hit, so they sent 3,000 machines across the ocean, expecting American arcade owners to scoop them up. But it turns out that Radar Scope just didn't click with American gamers. The market was already flooded with space shooters, and Radar Scope didn't offer enough to really stand out. Only 1,000 units sold. The remaining 2,000? Well, they just sat there, collecting dust in a warehouse. Not exactly the start Nintendo was hoping for. At this point, things were looking bad. Money was running out, and if something didn't change, and fast, Nintendo of America could have shut down before it even really started. The pressure was on, and Arakawa knew they needed a completely new game, not just a rehash of another space shooter. Enter Shigeru Miyamoto. Back then, he was just a young designer at Nintendo, mostly working on arcade cabinet artwork. Yamauchi handed him an almost impossible task: create a brand new game that could replace Radar Scope and actually sell in the US. No pressure, right? Miyamoto wasn't a programmer. He was a creative visionary with a deep passion for storytelling and design, especially when it came to making toys. So rather than following the trends of existing arcade games, he sought to craft an experience that felt more like an interactive cartoon, something that would engage players emotionally and challenge them in fun new ways. He sketched out ideas, drawing inspiration from Western cartoons and classic films. He originally planned to create a game based on Popeye, featuring Bluto, Olive Oil, and Popeye himself. But when licensing issues got in the way, Miyamoto pivoted. Bluto became a giant ape, Olive Oil became Pauline, and Popeye became the mustached hero who would later be known as Mario. Miyamoto had come up with a game that would eventually be called Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong wasn't just about racking up points, but it also had a narrative, with characters players could connect with. The game's levels were designed to feel like obstacles in a daring escape, rather than just a shooting spree. And most importantly, the mechanics: jumping over barrels, climbing ladders, using a hammer to smash obstacles, offered something truly unique at the time. But even with this exciting concept, turning it into a working arcade game was a huge challenge. Nintendo's engineers, led by the talented Gunpei Yokoi, worked tirelessly to bring Miyamoto's ideas to life. Programming was painstakingly difficult as arcade technology was still quite limited, and translating a cinematic vision into simple 8-bit mechanics required creative problem solving. But eventually, after countless revisions and adjustments, Donkey Kong was ready for the real test. Before going all in, Arakawa and his team decided to test Donkey Kong. By this time, Nintendo had moved its headquarters to Washington, as being located on the West Coast cut 2 whole weeks off of shipping times from Japan. So early prototypes of the machine were placed in 2 Seattle area bars. If people actually played the game, maybe, just maybe, Nintendo had a shot. Well, guess what? It worked. The test machines made over $30 a day, which was huge for an arcade game at the time. Seeing the potential, Nintendo made a risky but genius move. They converted all of those unsold radar scope cabinets into Donkey Kong machines. That's right, 2,000 arcade units that had been collecting dust suddenly became gold mines. As soon as the game hit arcades nationwide, it became a phenomenon. Donkey Kong's unique gameplay and charming characters made it a smash hit. By the end of the year, over 67,000 machines had been sold. Nintendo of America went from near bankruptcy to an overnight sensation, proving that a single great game could turn a company's fortunes around. But the impact of Donkey Kong didn't stop there. This game wasn't just a hit, it set the stage for Nintendo's entire future. Mario? He started here. Shigeru Miyamoto, his career skyrocketed because of Donkey Kong. Nintendo's dominance in gaming, it all traces back to this moment. Without Donkey Kong, there's a very real chance we wouldn't have seen the NES, Super Mario Bros., The Legend of Zelda. We likely wouldn't be anticipating the release of the Switch 2. Nintendo could have been just another failed arcade company lost to time. So, is there a moral to this story? I suppose there is. Sometimes failure is just the first step to success. Nintendo bet everything on radar scope, and it failed miserably. But instead of giving up, they adapted, took a risk, and Donkey Kong turned it all around. This wasn't just a lucky break. It was hard work, creativity, persistence, and knowing when to pivot. And that's why Nintendo is still standing strong decades later. So what do you think? Would Nintendo have survived without Donkey Kong? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Thanks for watching, and happy gaming, my friends.